Hey, what is up, everybody? It is the Epic Venomous Fat Man here. Time for a brand new segment of The Verdict for all of you guys out there. This time, it's my video review of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Just came out today. I saw it last night at a midnight showing, and I got a lot to say about this movie. You know, some good, some interesting, some bad, but let's dive right into it. Now, I've seen a bunch of reviews for this movie, and one of the biggest things that's kind of touted about and kind of almost a little bit complained about is the new format of which The Hobbit is being presented in. In case you guys did not know, The Hobbit is actually being presented not only in a standard 24 frames per second, you know, the industry standard for films and movies in the industry, but also it's trying to push this new standard for showing films in 48 frames per second, almost double, or pretty much double, the actual frame rate of, you know, traditional film. So a lot of people have had their opinions about it. A lot of people don't seem to like it because it gives it that much more of like a smoother look. Very similar if you were watching something on an HD television, like a daytime program or any other movie that was filmed back in the day but shown in a higher definition TV. That's how The Hobbit would look in 48 frames per second. Now, some people said that some of the CG effects that were actually in The Hobbit, you know, they kind of stand out way too much and kind of look out of place in the new format. But besides all that, I saw the film in the original 24 frames per second, you know, the standard. And to be honest with you, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was awesome. I have not gotten a chance to see the 48 frames per second, but I will at a later date, and I'll probably talk about it at some point. But let's talk about the film itself, you know, outside of the frame rate. So, what is The Hobbit? The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey is the first in 3 films, which are the prequels to the Lord of the Rings movies that were done by Peter Jackson, which is pretty cool in of itself. But this is pretty much all the story that's going on in the first original book, which is the prequel to the Lord of the Rings, called The Hobbit. Now, this kind of part of the story takes place during the beginning where Bilbo Baggins, you know, he's very young compared to how he is in The Lord of the Rings. He comes into contact with Gandalf. Gandalf visits him in his actual home in Hobbiton and actually kind of brings him on this journey with these dwarves that are trying to reclaim this treasure that was taken away from them, reclaim their kingdom as well, from a dragon named Smaug. Now, the big chunk of this part of the story only takes place at the very almost beginning areas of the book, the beginnings areas of the main story that Tolkien had created, where they go from Hobbiton, they go over towards, I forgot the name of the actual mountains that they go to, where they run into the goblins, and Bilbo runs into Gollum for the very first time, and they lead right into the beginning of Mirkwood Forest. So anybody who's a fan of the book, that's where kind of like your stopping point is for this part 1 without giving too much away. If you read the book, if you heard anything about the book, or, you know anything about the world that Tolkien had made, or even if you're just a fan of Lord of the Rings, you probably already know at this point what goes on in The Hobbit. But overall, how is it filmed? How does it look on the actual big screen? Looks fantastic. One thing I will say that's a big change for this movie in particular from the original Lord of the Rings movies, there's a lot more humor in this movie. One of the things I haven't seen a lot of people talk about is the humor that's presented all throughout The Hobbit on An Unexpected Journey. From the very beginning, when you're actually in Bilbo's home, all the way through to when you get to actual parts when they're actually interacting with some of the goblins and the orcs that they come into contact with, and even at different points, you know, with Gandalf and Bilbo and Thorin when they're in Rivendell, there's kind of like underlying humor that happens, you know, in various parts of the film. There's like little funny little moments that just you can't help but giggle, and even points when they're actually dealing with the Goblin King. There's a really funny part right before Gandalf actually gets into a fight with the Goblin King that, you know, made people in the theater kind of laugh. And I thought it was interesting that Peter Jackson decided to implement so much more humor into this actual movie. You know, in comparison to what he did with Lord of the Rings, which is much more serious. It had some elements of humor, but it wasn't as prevalent in this one as it was in this one. It's kind of like a little bit of a George Lucas type of approach. George Lucas, the original Star Wars films, the first 3 that he did, you know, were very serious. And then when you get to the prequels, you actually start to see a little much more humor coming out of the subject matters to kind of lighten things up. Because overall, while The Hobbit isn't as, you know, crazy as far as like heavy-duty emotional tension as it was in Lord of the Rings, there is some serious stuff going on. They're actually going on this epic quest. So it's kind of nice how Peter Jackson kind of implemented that lighthearted humor into there. It doesn't do anything to harp the film. It doesn't do anything to detract you from the actual main overall story, but it does add a little bit extra flavor into the mix. Now, besides all that, besides the story of Bilbo, which is supposed to be the main story, you get a lot of other stuff kind of thrown into there, into the mix. You know, the backstory behind Thorin and why he's actually leading the dwarves to go reclaim the treasure at the Lonely Mountain, which is guarded by Smaug the dragon, as well as also the kind of background stuff going on behind the scenes with Gandalf, which kind of, you know, alludes to and hints at a lot of the events that happen in Lord of the Rings. One of the complaints I saw in a lot of reviews was that there was a lot of different moments scattered throughout the film that kind of like hinted back at Lord of the Rings, or very similar. It almost kind of like remember this, quote unquote, type of moment in various different spots, including when Bilbo first puts on the ring, including also when you get certain elements or certain monsters that I won't spoil for you that actually appear in certain areas that are very big and prevalent in Lord of the Rings. I didn't kind of get any sort of like bother from that. It did contribute to the main overarching, you know, stuff that was going on and why things were happening a certain way, and the kind of, you know, the mindset of what was going on while these dwarves were going on this epic quest. You know, I do understand some people's concerns that, you know, this is a completely different, you know, story. It's completely way before the events of Lord of the Rings, and it is kind of like a franchising thing where they kind of just trying to give you the little extra nudge, you know, for fans of Lord of the Rings, and the little nods and the fan service. But again, it wasn't so much of a big deal where it harped on the entire movie, where it kind of, you know, detracted from the experience. Overall, I love the guys that play the dwarves. I think they're hilarious. You know, all the different dwarves, all 13 of them, which is pretty cool. Really fun to watch. You know, there's some funny sequences in Bilbo's home in the very beginning where a lot of the iconic songs that you guys, if you ever read the books or even seen the cartoon movie, if you might remember, the way that they're handled is really, really well done. I thought it was fun to watch. I thought it was great on film. It looked fantastic. The CG looked amazing. The orcs look crazy. I will say that it's a little bit different now that the orcs, the actual goblins and such, are all CG. They're not, was it actual people with makeup and such, which is a little bit of a disappointment because I thought they looked fantastic in Lord of the Rings, but they don't look terrible in The Hobbit on an Unexpected Journey. So they look pretty cool, looked awesome. Now, going into the ending of this movie, without giving too much away, again, if you're already a fan of the actual books or the actual cartoon stuff or Lord of the Rings, you already know what happens. But at the point where they kind of ended this to go on to the next movie, you know, sometime later on, either this year or into next year, I thought it was really well done, really well handled. I thought it was a good benchmark to kind of stop at, so that way we could continue to a whole bunch of stuff later on. Because look, we got a ton of extra stuff, you know, as far as the main overarching story of The Hobbit. You still got the stuff in Mirkwood Forest, you know, the Wood Elves, you know, dealing with the dragon Smaug, which has a really cool looking shot at the end of the film. You know, it's not a full money shot of what Smaug is going to look like, but you do get a hint of what, you know, his actual look or whatnot. And also, again, the Battle of Five Armies, which is like the big climactic thing, or big series of climactic events that happen in The Hobbit that leads all the way into Lord of the Rings. That's going to be cool, but that's way down the line into the second, into the third movie. So we got plenty of time. This is like a good way to kind of whet our appetites to see how this is all going to turn out and how it's going to look on film. All the films I know are actually shot already. All the principal photography is done. They're doing a lot of the CG, compositing and stuff. I can't wait. I enjoyed The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. You guys should definitely check it out this holiday season. But that's just my opinion, guys. Leave your comments and video responses. I don't mind. Just keep it civil. Let me know what you guys think. If you're a fan of The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, were you excited to actually check out this movie? Or are you actually going to see this movie now that you've seen my review? What do you want to see actually go on, and what kind of things that you want to see in the next two movies for this actual franchise? Put it in the comment section below, and I will talk to you guys again soon. So, I'm VFM, the Epic One. That was my review for The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Great film, great movie. Should definitely check it out. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace out. Stay epic, everybody.